Hi, folks. I'm Daniel Myers, Developer Relations here at Snowflake. On today's episode of Powered By, I'm talking with Adam Woods, the CTO of Choozle, a digital advertising platform that leverages a true 360-degree view of consumer data to deliver a unified advertising campaign across display, video, mobile, audio, TV, and really a whole slew of other mediums, all built on and powered by Snowflake. Today, I want to learn a little bit about you, your background, kind of the history of Choozle, and tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, good. And thank you, Daniel. Yeah, so I've been, the early part of my career, really I started focusing on building enterprise grade software for large insurance carriers. About 10 years ago, I really found a passion inside of advertising. And really it was around the type of data that we could use to really, help power better outcomes for, publishers, advertisers, and ultimately the people that consume all of these services. As I got into that, initially it was really around scalable systems that could cover entire populations globally inside of a large holding company. Over the years, my philosophy and kind of the industry has really changed, and we have started to prioritize the ethical use of data and privacy-friendly approaches. And so, definitely had a lot of, kind of seen interesting things in terms of the way that, our ability to take data, consume it, and then have the power to be able to tag it with the things that we need to really earn the trust along that has evolved. Personally, I've used kind of all kinds of data systems. Early on, SQL warehouses that were on-prem, NoSQL, graph databases, search, and really have found kind of a love for the cloud data warehouse concept, and some of the things that we're able to do with it. I joined Choozle about 9 months ago, and really came in with a focus on building our next generation platform and taking some of our product features to the next level.
That's exciting. So, what stage? It sounds like Choozle is growing rapidly. What stage is the company at today, and what's kind of the funding status today?
Yeah. So we actually we just closed a Series C, so we're extremely excited about that. And using that as a way to start really supercharging our growth even more than the fantastic growth that we have. Today we're right at about 70 people and growing all the time, especially focused on developers, data engineers, and data scientists.
That's exciting. So in your role, in the 9 months that you've been at Choozle, what is, the key goal for you and your team?
Yeah, absolutely. And, really, so Choozle exists as a platform to help serve the mid-market. So what we saw was that there was a lot of really great enterprise grade technology out there, but that it was inaccessible into our market segment because, there were high barriers to entry in terms of contractual duration and the cost of the monthly minimums. So, really what we've always been working on is how do we simplify and give better access? And so specifically when I came in, it was really around the notion of doubling down on data performance and performance-based outcomes for the advertisers that are working with us. So we represent about 600, a little bit more than 600 agencies and advertisers that together combine and manage campaigns across 5,000 different end brands that are using our platform and our service. And so really the notion is, how do we use data to better inform what they're doing, give them better insight into the performance of their campaigns, and then give them predictive analytics that really help them achieve better outcomes based on the different tactics that are available to them to use through the platform.
That's a tall order. So that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, very
So,
modest.
can we see a demo of it today?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so what you're seeing here is the new version of our UI that we've been working on and are getting very close to releasing over the next quarter. So as we were building this new UI, one of the things that was really apparent to us was that we needed an upgraded capability to power our campaign reporting. And that's really where we turned to Snowflake and brought that into our warehousing technology stack. So what you can see is, as I go into the reporting, this is at parity with what we would have historically had inside of our legacy approach, where you can see that we've got key metrics, and then we've got the ability to do some comparisons of high-level aggregations. Where we've really been focused on, where we found the power of Snowflake that gives us an advantage, gives us a boost, is when we start looking at the areas where we can go much deeper. So what you're seeing here is essentially the same thing, but now we've pulled in a lot of more advanced concepts. So things like looking at cost per completion or click-through rate, and then segmenting that by time of day so that we can understand if there's a better day parting strategy that one of our advertisers should be adopting. And then you can also see that we're able to look now more deeply. So we're seeing the sites that the placements are being put on. And then we can also look at things like device type, and we can take that down to a very deep level of insight. And then the kind of historically, we would have been able to bring these metrics through to a customer, but it was in a laggy experience where you had to go through an offline batch and then work with it in a way that wasn't interactive. And now you can see that because this is all tied into the warehouse, I've got the ability to interact with the data, sort it any way that I want. I can do filters, and it gives us an ability to be expressive with data in a way that we never could before. And then again, in terms of like how we are able to go deeper, things like looking at zip codes, right? There's, I think, 30,000 plus zip codes in the United States. That level of aggregation inside of our legacy system would have just been unapproachable. Like this is a visualization that we would never have been able to do. We might have been able to grab like top 10 zip codes, but as you can see here, this literally is looking at this campaign, and it's got every single zip code that it's been serving to, which this one happens to be a national campaign. So it's serving to a lot of zip codes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then really in terms of kind of the big boulder that we're looking at, or the big kind of functional area, is how do we make data connected better for an advertiser? And so what you can see is that we have now also been able to take our traditional data, which is media that we're buying through the Choozle platform, and then for an advertiser, give them the ability to overlay that with data that's been synchronized with media that they're buying on other platforms. So if you think about a balanced marketing portfolio, you would be doing search, you would be doing social, you would be doing open web display, and you might be doing connected TV along with other tactics. What we've been able to do through our partnerships with Snowflake and with Fivetran is really be able to use connectors to aggregate all of that data into our Snowflake warehouse, and then give a customer specific view of it, where they're able to see all of their campaigns running across all of the different media sources that they're buying. And we were able to do this in a very simple and scalable way, where we can offer this to all of our advertisers rather than having to do customized or custom work to get here.
That's exciting. So as you've been building this, what has been, some of the, so you mentioned a few of the areas that this has been improved from your legacy system. What are some other areas where like Snowflake has really been able to be a key differentiator between your this newer system and what you've built in the past?
Yeah, I would say the biggest differentiator is really around our ability to experiment without a lot of fear, right? Like we can always start from the assumption of let's go build the absolute best thing that we can for our customers. Let's get the most detailed data. Let's get the most advanced reporting. Let's give the best understanding that we can give. And then we can look at, like, once we've done that, we can experiment into that with no fear of breaking production or having to make big, upfront capital investments, right? We can just do R&D and try to find the best products that we can bring. And then we can treat it as a cost optimization problem and just say, okay, how do I make this at a price point that we can bring to market effectively? So it's a very different conversation than what we would have had before, which is, should we add this piece of data? Is that too much? Are we going to break something, right? Those conversations have entirely fallen off, right? We know that we have the scale to be able to solve any problem that we want. And so then it's just, how do we be the most expressive version of ourselves to really bring the best to the market and then optimize over time.
And so as you move forward, right, on this platform, what is, kind of on the roadmap for Choozle? What's a challenge that you're targeting today that will bring further improvement for your customers?
Yeah, so the immediate roadmap is really around rolling out the scaled version of this, and bringing up our adoption of the more advanced metrics. I think further down, what we're really looking at is bringing in more machine learning so that we're able to do a better job of predicting outcomes based on what we're seeing in the usage of the platform, and then using that to make recommendations of enhanced tactics that are going to get a more effective outcome for that customer. And really part of that is also kind of shedding some of the leading indicators that we use inside of our industry, right? So if you think about something like a click-through rate, right, like that only talks about the engagement of a person to that advertisement and the very first interaction that they have. What we're really thinking about and really focused on is how do we go deeper, right? What did that person ultimately do? What was the effectiveness of the media mix? Are we driving the right type of buyers to our advertisers? And how are they converting? So we can really look at, like, what's their lifetime value? What's their initial order value? And really thinking about it in terms of what did those advertising tactics and investment that brand made really truly drive in the end to their bottom line. And that's where being able to have this ability to stitch together data, bring things together that we might have found hard to bring together before, do it in a reliable, predictable, compliant way, and then really give people the ability to optimize towards their outcome rather than optimize towards things like media spend or something along those lines.
That makes a lot of sense. And so, one of the common questions that I get from folks is, how should they go about evaluating and deciding on a data cloud, right? So something like Snowflake's data cloud. How did Choozle do it? How did you go about your evaluation process and ultimately land on Snowflake?
So I actually ran across Snowflake in 2017. So I've been using it for quite a while now. When I first came across it, we were running a process that was sitting on a very large Oracle data warehouse, and we had scaled out of that on-prem infrastructure. We found that we could do the process inside of Redshift, but that as we were wrapping more and more parallelism around it, it wasn't keeping up, and it was getting more and more complicated. And so when I first saw Snowflake and first started using it really was, kind of there was less understanding in the market, and it was a little bit more of a risk at that time. What I ended up doing was basically taking that problem and then putting it on Snowflake and exercising the kind of limits of how parallel I could make that problem run. And I exercised that kind of both on the scale up and the scale out aspects. So in terms of scale up, it was, okay, run the problem on a medium, run it on a large, run it on an extra large. And when I saw the linear reduction of time, that was when I really kind of knew that I'd found something that was different than anything I'd ever seen before, frankly. And that gave me a lot of confidence. And then the ability to run multiple warehouses at the same time, dealing with different problems on a single set of data, that really gave me the comfort to say, I know that I can build something where, a UI facing experience is never going to be impacted or degraded by, a batch report or, an experiment I'm running. So, that was really where kind of early on, I found that this was something that was going to be really good. And I've been, brought it in at that company, was super happy with it, did a lot to transform. When I came into Choozle, literally on kind of, call it my first day, I went to one of our media providers that I knew was running data shares in Snowflake and said, I'd like all of our impression data that we have for the entire reporting window, and I'd like to get it through a data share. And so, literally, we put in the formal request with them at 5 one day, and I had every impression we had bought for that entire window delivered into my Snowflake account by 11 o'clock the next morning, right? And as a byproduct of the way the data is stored and they had the cost on their side, I had literally done that for $0. So I went to my CEO and I said, okay, here, let me show you some reports off of all of our data at an event level. And, was able to do the first evaluation for literally, single digit dollars on my credit card and showed him value on day 2. And then, from there it was, okay, now let's formalize the reasons why we're doing this and really show, what are we going to be able to do with scalability, and then made the decision. But, that proof of concept was, literally days because of the technology.
That's awesome to hear. That's awesome. So, for the viewers today, if they want to learn more about you and about Choozle, where should they go?
Yeah, certainly anybody that would like to connect on LinkedIn and reach out to me directly, happy to connect and share my experiences. Anybody that wants to learn about Choozle can go to choozle.com. And anybody's free to contact me at adam@choozle.com as well.
That's awesome. And so for everybody else, if you want to learn how you can build your application and your business on Snowflake, check out developers.snowflake.com and the Powered by program at Snowflake. Thanks, and see you next time.